Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Backmarkers F1 Show podcast. This is episode number 97, as we're going to be recapping the 2020 Turkish Grand Prix here on this Monday afternoon on the November the 16th, 2020. No Shaker Barty this week. He's on way on a movie set. That's why we're bringing this podcast to you via Zoom. So let me bring in my other co-host, Tyler McDonald, just a couple miles down the road. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Chris. Yeah, what was a interesting Turkish Grand Prix. We finally got like the weather that we wanted. Pretty wild weekend. Everyone was driving on ice, it seemed like, all weekend, but it made for an interesting Grand Prix in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And just before we start, let me be the first to maybe publicly and officially congratulate you, as you are a brand new homeowner just over the weekend. So congratulations to you, and obviously the best of luck with everything with that.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Yeah, pretty stressful trying to buy a house in a pandemic. But we're excited to start moving into our new place. So yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, sounds great. So just before we get into all the Turkish Grand Prix stuff that we have to go through, because there is a lot to get to. Of course, as always, our podcast is sponsored by the GPBox.com. You can check the video description down below, and you'll find some discount codes and links. They've actually just updated their website for anybody that's looking to do any holiday shopping for your F1 fan and your family or your friends. They've kind of broken it down a little bit so you can find the best gifts for them as well. And of course, our Twitter giveaway is still open on our profile page for the 100K view challenge. So just head to our Twitter page. That's also found in the link in the description below, and you can enter there as well. Okay, Tyler, so basically what I wanted to start off with, maybe just recapping this race, was actually to go back onto the Saturday.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff on the GP box. I was looking on there the other day, and I don't know, there's a lot of cool stuff on the GP box. So make sure you use our code when you go check out some great Christmas gifts on there.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's middle of November, but I guess the season is already starting. Because I was just on it yesterday, and I noticed that they updated it. So yeah, check that out for sure. So let's start on the Saturday, actually, which obviously history was made, and not really something that we expected at all. I mean, Max Verstappen was looking really good all weekend long, pretty much led every session going into Q3. And then out of nowhere, Lance Stroll grabs his first career pole position. So I know you must have seen the lap. So what were your thoughts when you saw Stroll getting pole position?
Well, it was pretty intense and pretty excited as a Canadian in general, just because, first Canadian on pole since 1997. It was kind of a little bit of a big deal. I mean, that's 23 years since we've had a Canadian on the pole. So huge shoes for Canadian racing. But in general, I mean, a very impressive lap in car control by Lance Stroll. He's really struggled since Mugello to really get his grip going. Of course, he had the COVID diagnosis and kind of had some rust to shake off, and then the two accidents last Grand Prix. Really, it seemed to hurt his confidence a lot. He was very frustrated with himself. And you could see the emotion, the frustration pour out when he got the official pole position on the radio. I mean, that's one of the most excited I've seen someone for a pole position. So pretty impressed by Lance and his driving skills there. And I think he kind of showed a lot of people that, hey, I can do this. I got good car control. I can be a top F1 driver. It was just everything kind of came together there for him.
Yeah, it was almost seemed like all of that that frustration just came through and just came out, in that team radio, which was really cool.
I will say though, I was pretty annoyed at Brad. Brad was not excited, and Brad needed to be a little more excited.
I don't know what it is. I think like his engineer. That's just the only tone that he has.
Yeah, no emotion.
Yeah, exactly. Like people have been commenting about this in previous races, even after. Remember, he crashed in Mugello, and Brad was like, "What happened?" It was like this weird tone.
What happened, Lance?
Yeah. So maybe he just has that only one tone in his voice. But I mean, I guess he was excited. The team definitely was for sure. But yeah, it was an exceptional lap. And when you look at the likes of Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, I mean, Lewis Hamilton was down all the way in sixth, and even Valtteri Bottas all the way down in ninth, and Lance Stroll was able to get pole position. So just a phenomenal lap. And I think that this weekend, as we move into what happened in the race, regardless of the race result, I still think that this weekend was, I don't know if he needed to prove it anymore, but was still further proof that he deserves a spot in Formula One. I think the way that he drove the first stint of that race, from the race start all the way until that second pit stop onto the fresh inters, was just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I think he was the best driver on the circuit at that point. Was continuously putting in fastest laps to start the race. Once the tires started to wear out a little bit, you saw Sergio Perez start to close the gap and set fastest lap times. But Lance was keeping the distance around a 10-second gap to Sergio. And after that first pit stop, I think it was like 7 seconds before the pit stop, and after it was about 10. So he even extended his lead a little bit. Just unfortunate for him that the strategy call didn't go his way. The new tires really didn't work out for him when he switched onto the new inters at the end of the race. But for the first half of the race, he was lights out and really was commanding. And you were thinking, okay, Lance can actually win this race. There's a high percentage chance that he does this. And just unfortunately didn't work out for him.
Yeah, I thought like when it got to sort of lap 20 and he was still in the lead, and I think after Verstappen spun trying to get by Perez, I was like, let's just end the race now. Because it was such a long way to go. You know, it was one of the longest races I've ever watched. And you got the feeling that okay, it's a long shot, but there's a possibility he made no mistakes. The gap was pretty decent, even though it was coming down. He still had a decent gap. The likes of Hamilton weren't really finding the groove just yet. So I was like, maybe he could do it, maybe he could do it. And then obviously it fell off. But for everybody wondering, what happened to Lance Stroll? Obviously, he was complaining about graining when he came in after the second pit stop for the fresh inters. And I was just telling you, Tyler, before we came on, I just jump on Twitter. Let's see if there's any breaking news. And there sort of was one this morning. So I'm just going to share my screen with you here quickly, just so that we can show why the reason was that Lance Stroll was struggling so hard on that set of tires. And, the thing is that, let me just pull it up here. We weren't really sure what was going on. Did he have any damage? And it turns out that he did. So this is coming from Racing Point this morning. So they say, update, during the team's routine post-race car set down, we discovered large damage to the underside of Lance Stroll's front wing that was a significant contributor to the graining issues he experienced during his second and third stints on the intermediate tires. So both stints actually on the inters as well. So just to kind of go further down here, Lance reported poor tire performance, significant understeer and graining from lap 17 onwards in the race. Pitting for a fresh set of intermediates on the lap 36 failed to resolve the problem, with the graining becoming even more severe. And then they go on to describe what the issue was exactly. One of the strakes on the underside of the front wing had come loose and lodged itself in such a way that the blockage caused a significant loss of front downforce. The resultant loss of front downforce contributed to increased levels of graining. And then there's just a little bit more about the data and the fact that they couldn't visually see it, but they still obviously were able to see it in the data later on. So there's the answer of why he was struggling so much, because like we said, he came out after that second pit stop and just progressively started falling backwards and backwards. Vettel got by him, Lando Norris passed him eventually, and we were just like, what was going on? So here's the answer.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense, because it was really weird how he had such worse grading than everyone else, because it seemed like he was managing the tires very well in that first stint. And I know you were talking about on the broadcast how Racing Point can really fire their tires, get their tires really warmed up. That helped a lot during qualifying, and it helped a lot during the race too, especially the first lap. We had Racing Point 1-2 for a long, long time. And, they were thinking, oh, maybe the tires are too hot. But no, the front wing damage seemed to really hurt Lance. And I have to wonder where that exactly happened in the race, because I don't really remember him having a moment at all, or really having a chance to sustain much damage. So I don't know if he went over a curb maybe and that lodged something or what, because it seemed that it just kind of came out of nowhere. All of a sudden he started losing time. So you have to wonder too, with all that grading problem, if they knew about this. I mean, maybe they should have taken the chance on slicks. I know they're looking to try and keep third in the constructors standings, and I know those 2 points that Lance got somewhat helped toward that. But if I was racing, I was thinking with 10 laps to go, Lance is struggling so much, just stick him on a pair of softs and see how he does.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, nobody eventually went with the gamble. We were kind of expecting it from somebody, but nobody did. I mean, there was sort of in turn 13, 14, was a little bit more standing water, so it might have been more difficult there. But we did see a dry line, and then eventually, as we'll get to probably later in the show, with Lewis Hamilton's tires basically became slicks in the end anyway. So that was just staying out long enough for that. So yeah, I agree. Why not? I mean, he finished it was ninth in the end. So what's that? 2 points. So I mean, I guess every point does matter, but still, they might have been able to. I think Martin Brundle was saying that fresh slicks would get 10 seconds per lap almost.
Yeah, that was his prediction, and I mean, who knows? It would have been hard to pass too because you would have to pass on a more wet part of the track. Because I'm sure the defense would be just stay on the tri line for those runners on the intermediates. But it still would have made it an interesting strategy call, and who would have ducked in secondly or third to try and cover off those slicks. So it would have been an interesting strategy call. Would have shaken the race up a little bit. But in the end, no one decided to take the risk, which was interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, regardless, again, I still think that it was a superb weekend for Lance Stroll and a good weekend too for him to get past all this bad luck. And again, when you look at it, I think the last 5 races or so were a little bit overblown in terms of the criticism on Stroll. When you look at obviously the crash in Mugello, it wasn't his fault. There was a car failure in Russia, wasn't able to get out in Q3 because of the technical problem, then got hit by Charles Leclerc, which ended his race. Okay, and then obviously he missed the Nürburgring and then had 2 bad races in Imola and Portimao. So a little bit overblown, I think, when it was looking at like, oh, this is such a poor run of form. It's like, well, 2 of those races were his fault. The rest were just something that he couldn't control. So I think that this was a really positive weekend for him and interesting to see what he'll be able to do for the rest of the year. Now, when you were talking about who else would have possibly made that gamble for slicks, Sebastian Vettel was possibly the one that was looking to go on the slicks. And what a race for Sebastian Vettel. And I think that, his start was so good that I think we'll take a look at it here. It's actually pretty short. F1 posted it on their social media, but it's definitely worth looking at just because it was so impressive. It was Kimi Räikkönen-esque in Portimao, Portugal. I'm not sure, actually, it might have been not as impressive as Kimi's, but nonetheless, it was still pretty amazing. So this was lap 1, and obviously, so many drivers were struggling for grip, some even starting in second gear just to minimize the wheel spin. But Sebastian Vettel's race was really determined here in this first corner and on this first lap.
Yeah, really impressive here by Sebastian Vettel. I mean, you can see he just fired off right at the line. And I think Daniel Ricciardo is one that started in second gear. You can't see it in this angle if Seb did start in second gear or not, but I know Ricciardo was one. And of course, he had Ocon and Bottas spinning there. Those are some easy positions. But I mean, just like that, he was up to P4 in the first corner. So really impressive by Seb. And then I believe that's Lewis going off there when so then up to P3 for Seb. So very impressive start for Sebastian. Got the tires fired off right away and got to hold that P3 position for a little bit too, if I remember right, until Lewis came back on, I think it was pit stops when Lewis overtook Vettel for P3. So it was looking like we were going to have an all Aston Martin podium for a little bit.
Yeah.
with the 2 racing points and obviously Sebastian Vettel going to Aston Martin next year.
Yeah, that's right. It was amazing, though. And I think that eventually it was after he passed Hamilton, Verstappen came up behind him as well. And he was holding Max for a good chunk of laps until the pit stops. He never got by him. But I was just impressed that, I found it ironic and kind of funny, too, that the guy known for spinning the most in the last 2 seasons didn't have one spin at all. Kept it on the track for all 58 laps. I thought it was probably one of his best drives, maybe in his career. I mean, it's certainly up there with Germany 2019, for example. Another wet race, Monza 2008. His first race victory comes to mind as well. So this was just a nice race to sort of remind everybody that, hey, like I'm still one of the best drivers out here in the world. I was just going through a really rough patch, and I thought he was absolutely superb.
Yeah, other than Germany a couple of years ago, and he was on slicks at that point. Seb has been proven to be pretty handy in the wet in his career. So not a complete surprise, I don't think, for him to be showing his performance today, or not today, but this weekend. But especially in a car now that isn't the greatest in Ferrari, it was really nice to see Seb have a positive weekend and get some solid points and try to kind of end on a high with Ferrari because they've been through so much, and it's especially this year, he's had so much success. He just hasn't gone over the top of them, and you kind of want to see them end on a positive note rather than the frustrating season we've seen so far with Sebastian Vettel versus Ferrari almost.
Yeah, exactly. And with only 3 races to go after this, it's just a nice way to build off as well for next season too.
Because absolutely,
Yeah, it's been more than a year since his last podium until now, obviously, and we weren't exactly sure if he was going to get on the podium again in a Ferrari. I didn't think so, to be honest with you. So this obviously comes as a pretty big surprise, and of course, we can take a look maybe at the last lap incident or the last lap drama that sort of led to the podium, because until then he was on for a solid P4 finish. Even if he wasn't going to be on the podium, I still think that it would have been a really good finish for him. But nonetheless, it was still just kind of taking chances of a good opportunity from a mistake from his teammate, no less. So let's take a look at the incident here. This was right at the end of the race. We were all celebrating Lewis Hamilton's 7th World Championship, the emotional team radio and everything. And then cut to this crazy last lap drama, which we don't get too often. So this was Charles Leclerc trying to go for an inside move on Sergio Perez, runs wide, and then Sebastian Vettel just taking care of the opportunity.
Yeah, it was handed nicely toward him, and then he was trying to get a good drive out of this corner because Sergio tires were absolutely dead to try and maybe nab P2, but wasn't able to get the traction. But fortunate for Sebastian Vettel. I mean, Charles, I don't know if you listened to his team radio after, but he was very annoyed at himself. Oh, you have it there. You have it queued up. So yeah, we can listen to Charles' radio if you want right now.
Yeah, this is the uncensored version. It wasn't played fully on the broadcast, I don't think. But yeah, let's maybe just have a listen at the uncensored version.
P4, slow button on. You did a good job. Really good job.
No, I did a shit job. 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 That's it. I did a fucking shit job.
Tranquillo Charles, è un bel risultato, stai tranquillo.
Ma che...
Bene così.
Sono un coglione. Non bene così, sono un coglione.
And ready off. And slow button on.
I am so sorry to the whole team. I am fucking stupid. As much as in Baku.
Basta Charles, basta. Porta la macchina.
Is that Binotto?
Al box.
Sì, la macchina ce la farò, normalmente. Se no farò un doppio coglione, se la metto dopo la bandiera scacchi. Now that I come down, congratulations to Seb, he deserves it. It's not been a good year for him, and yeah. Even if I'm so pissed off of myself, he's done a great job, and I hope you will enjoy it.
Copy.
Nice of him to calm down at the end.
Yeah, it was angry Charles, the PR Charles, midway through that thing. But yeah, you could tell how upset he was with himself. We saw that same reaction when he crashed in qualifying in Baku. And I mean, it was a small little mistake. It wasn't anything crazy. I mean, he was going for P2. He already had the position because Perez went wide. And he was up in P2 and just ended up locking the brakes up, trying to outbrake Sergio, who was coming back at him for P2. And let two positions slide. So unfortunate from Charles, but I mean, you could tell he was happy for Seb. He's known he's had a bad year, and kind of worked out for the best, I think, for everyone in that scenario. I mean, he still finished P4. It's not a podium, but he got good points, and his teammate got to go on the podium for, let's just say right now, one last time for Ferrari.
Yeah, most likely, I think. I mean, in case we get any more wet races, but there's some tough tracks coming up for them. So I think that is probably the last one.
I don't know how much rain that we're going to have in the desert in Bahrain and Abu Dhabi.
Good point. Yeah, it was amazing how quickly he calmed down. He went from like 10 to a 5 within a minute. But yeah, I guess the key to Vettel's success this season has been Binotto staying at home, staying back in Italy. So maybe the next couple of races, that's what they need him to do.
Well, Seb joked in his post-race press conference. He said, yeah, we'll see how next week goes, but if we don't do well next week, we'll have to tell Binotto to stay at home, which was pretty funny. Obviously, he said he was just joking in the end, but kind of funny that he said that.
Yeah, I wonder maybe it isn't that much of a joke.
Well, maybe.
Yeah. But yeah, a fantastic podium for Vettel, and still a good result for Ferrari as well. They shot up the constructor standings. I think they're only now 6 points back of Renault for fifth. So great haul of points.
Yeah, very nice for them. Of course, they're used to P3 or P2 in this constructor standings as of late, but that will help their confidence a little bit in getting a little bit more money. You speak of constructor standings. I think they were talking about on the broadcast how important this race was for Racing Point, just going back to them quickly, in getting P3 in the constructors, because the difference between P3 and P4 in the constructor standings is about $10 million, I believe is what they said, or 10 million pounds, one of the currencies that they use. It's a lot of money for these smaller teams that are fighting for that extra money. So you can tell how intense they were for getting points to get P3.
Yeah, great point that you bring up. And also just to add on to that, also McLaren, how important this race was for them in the constructor standings. Even though they did lose out to Racing Point, who has now moved into third place, they're only 5 points back, but they gained 15 points in that race thanks to Carlos Sainz's great drive in P5 and Lando Norris in P8 also with the fastest lap. Considering where they started from, with the grid penalties 13th and 15th, it was an amazing result because Renault was starting 5th and 7th, and obviously Racing Point was starting 1st and 3rd. So for them to snag 15 points and only be 5 points back of Racing Point is huge for them. And like you said, obviously for them, that big chunk of prize money is a big deal as well. So, last week we had at Imola, or not last week, 2 weeks ago at Imola, it was Renault who was kind of in the driver's seat, Racing Point who missed out, and now it's sort of flipped all around on its head once again, and now it's Racing Point in the driver's seat and McLaren just knocking on the door.
Yeah, it'll be interesting the last 3 races go. I mean, the square track at Bahrain will really suit the Racing Points with their top end speed, I think. So that's going to be a race for them to try and pounce on. I don't know how the other 2 races could go. Who knows what the other 2 races are, but I think that's a prime opportunity for Racing Point is coming up, is that very short, fast layout of Bahrain, the one we're not used to.
Yeah, absolutely. They got a good Renault's got a good low downforce package usually as well, so it could be pretty close. It's going to come really down to the wire, and I mean, who knows? Ferrari could maybe in the mix for a top 5 finish, depending on how friendly it is to their car. But yeah, we'll see. Now, getting back to the race, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Max Verstappen because for maybe the first time in quite a while, I don't know what you think, but for me anyways, Verstappen looked quite average in this race at the Turkish Grand Prix. Obviously, as we mentioned a couple minutes ago, he had the spin on Sergio Perez, which was just really a move that he just lost a ton of patience. I mean, that was never going to work on the outside, especially in the wet conditions. I mean, that green AstroTurf, whatever you call it, was completely soaked, and he spun right away, flat spotted the tires. And then after that, just wasn't. I mean, he was just struggling for traction on the low speed corners. I mean, every time he came out of the final corner, just massive amounts of oversteer, always was running wide. So, what did you think of Verstappen's race in a weekend where Mercedes were on the back foot? And this was it seemed like the weekend that was perfect for him, low grip, wet conditions, and just didn't end up delivering. Yeah,
I mean, he was very handy all weekend. Led FP1, FP2, FP3, Q1, Q2. Not Q3. I'll say that went to Stroll.
Actually, Q1 was Esteban Ocon.
Oh, was it? Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
I made the same mistake yesterday too.
I thought it was Verstappen. Okay, yeah. Wow, good for Ocon. I thought during the race, I thought, okay, well, maybe Max has a chance here. He's usually not too bad in the wet, from what I remember. But it seemed like the Red Bull couldn't fire the tires off, or at least they could keep consistent temperature in the tires, because we saw them doing decently at the start, and Albon was up there too, maybe looking for a podium himself. But mistakes from both of them. I mean, that you mentioned that lack of patience trying to overtake Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez said after the race, I believe, that he couldn't even see Max in his mirrors because his mirrors are so dirty. He said he knew he was near him, but didn't know exactly where he was. And that's Sergio Perez's fault for that incident. Nothing at all. That's completely on Max for not being patient enough. And I think he had another spin later on in the race too, or not too long after. He had another little moment where he spun out too. So it just wasn't Max's weekend, unfortunately for him. But knowing Max, he won't let that bother him. He'll be back stronger than ever in Bahrain.
Yeah, just another, very interesting circumstances with the track surface as well, which we're probably not going to see ever again, most likely.
I don't know. I think they should just resurface every track 10 days before F1 shows
I agree. That was amazing.
It's amazing.
Even in the dry, like when I was watching FP, I watched all the practice sessions for the first time in a while because it was back at Turkey, and like first practice session, it was literally ice.
Yeah, they're like, well, we can't drive on this, and they were using hard tires, which maybe throwing a set of softs to kind of rubber the track a little bit and help it out, but no, just go on the hardest tire and try to drive on new tarmac that's very slick, very because they're saying they use smooth stones. There's nothing coming out of the track to get that grip on the tires. It was very, very smooth, which if you know anything a little bit about friction, flat of the surface, the smooth, the slicker it is. It's just like that for anything.
I think I sent you guys this. I don't know if anybody else out there saw it on the Friday night after the free practices. They sent like engineers or whoever else out in road cars to lap the circuit just to improve the grip, which was useless in the end because it rained overnight and then Saturday and Sunday. So it washed whatever grip or marbles were on the track, just washed it all off anyway. But I just found that so funny because it was like this typical Formula One thing that only we would understand why it's funny. But that was it was hilarious to see.
Yeah, and because there are no support races at all this weekend too, so it's not even like they could rely on that to help rubber in the track. It was like, all right, well, they don't have a fast car out here. What's you got your Honda Civic? All right, just go for a couple.
Yeah, like they weren't driving fast enough. One of the guys was like weaving really hard, but the rest were just kind of driving really slowly in a straight line. So I don't think it would have helped anyway. But yeah, regardless, I thought it was still very exciting. And I don't think that it was fair to really criticize the track or the track organizers, to be honest with you, because it was so last minute that they got awarded this contract to host a race anyway. So, it was just amazing that we could come here to race. And if that to be confirmed slot for 2021 is still open, I think my vote would probably go to Istanbul Park to put it in there. I think this track absolutely needs to be back on the circuit. I kind of just forgot how great it was. And we usually get great races here regardless of conditions. So it'd be nice to see this track return permanently onto the calendar.
Yeah, it would. It's a really fun track to watch. Of course, in the dries, that for Apex left-hander is amazing to watch. In the wet, it's not really that amazing to watch. It's more like trying not to lose it during all four Apexes. But it is a very fun track, and hopefully they can get it back. Nothing should be blaming the organizers. If anything, it was a great idea that they resurfaced the track 10 days before the event. It worked out great. So yeah, I think that they should be on the calendar. Same as Portimao. I think they should be back as well for next year. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more with that. So we were talking about Red Bull, the other Red Bull, Alex Albon, who for the first half of the race after Lance Stroll was starting to fall off, I honestly thought that he was going to probably win the race. He was in the best position after Perez was struggling with his tires later on, and then he was just flying. He was the fastest guy on track. He was seconds faster than the cars behind him, and it seemed like, okay, Albon's in a perfect position to, at the very least, get a podium finish, if not win the race. And then once again, just made a simple mistake, spun. I believe it was lap 34. I can't exactly remember which turn it was. I believe maybe it was turn 5. Spun around, and then obviously Hamilton passed him, and then eventually Verstappen caught up, got by him as well. And then eventually Albon did come home in P7, which was quite disappointing, just to see where he was. And obviously his teammate finished ahead as well. But I just kind of wanted to throw this question up to you. We've been talking about Albon pretty much every weekend for the last couple of months now. And this race obviously was a great sort of contrast between him and the man that's been rumored to be a candidate for his seat next season, and that's Sergio Perez. So let me pose the question to you. After the Turkish Grand Prix, who do you think is in, let's say, pole position to get that Red Bull seat in 2021? Is it Alex Albon, or is it now Sergio Perez after his performance?
I think Red Bull would be silly not to put Sergio Perez in that car. It would be a travesty if he is not in a top tier car for next season, because he's shown this year how much potential he has. I think other than he scored in every race except for the two that obviously he missed because of COVID.
That's right.
Yeah. So, consistency is there for Sergio. He's proven week in, week out that he deserves to be in F1. So if he's not on the grid in general next year, it's a shame, because he should be on the grid next year for sure. But if Red Bull wants someone to get them a lot of points, push Max, help the strategy to fight the Mercedes next year, Sergio Perez is the man to do it, and he should 100% be in that Red Bull seat for next season. And it's nothing against Alex Albon. He's a fantastic driver. He's going to do great things in F1, but he needs some more time to learn. He's not ready for that Red Bull seat, in my opinion. And I think another year or two at AlphaTauri would be fantastic for him.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. I think it would be absolute travesty if Sergio Perez, after this season, not just the last couple seasons, obviously his body of work speaks for itself, but just this season alone, what he's been able to achieve in a car that's been more competitive than the last couple of years. And quite frankly, if it wasn't for some of the mistakes from his team, he probably would have at least another podium, if not more, throughout the season. So I think that Red Bull, if they don't put Sergio Perez in that car for next season, they're really going to regret their decision. Now, personally, deep down, I think that they're still going to stick with Alex Albon. Of course, I've mentioned this so many times because of the 51% tie ownership of Red Bull. And Johnny Herbert finally made this comment on the broadcast, I believe, in one of the FP2 sessions it was. And I really haven't heard any of the official kind of pundits maybe talk about that element of this seat, but he finally brought it up. And I think that he's absolutely right. And it's what I've been saying, that they want to keep Albon. It's not just about the driver's skill anymore, as we're clearly seeing with how the grid is shaping up. It's about more. It's about sponsorship. It's about what you can bring. And putting all that aside, I think that the easiest decision would be to put Perez in that car. When you see what he did in this race, but also all the other races, like that's a crazy stat. The fact that he's fourth in the championship now after missing 2 races, he's scored in every other race. The only other guy to do that is the 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton this season. So a combination of Perez and Verstappen, I think, would really be what Red Bull needs right now in this era to fight Mercedes, because I still think Mercedes are going to be the best car and team in 2021. And the only way for Red Bull to even inch close or challenge for the championship is to have 2 cars on regularly equal footing. And I think that Perez is just the perfect guy for the candidacy to line up next to Verstappen.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously that second Mercedes seat is still available, but Lewis kind of squashed those rumors that he was leaving during the championship ceremony with Mark Webber. Said he wants to do more great things in F1 and wants to help with changing the dynamic of how F1 approaches their race weekends in terms of equality and going all these different countries to help with equality. I mean, it kind of makes me think they're going to Saudi Arabia next season for the first time. And I think just last year they allowed women to go to sporting events, which is kind of silly to think of. So hopefully that, if that's the plan, they can kind of, he can help out bring equality like that. But yeah, going back to the whole Perez thing, he has to go in that seat. There's no other choice. Money, it would be nice, but he would still, Alex Albon will still be in the Red Bull family with AlphaTauri and representing Red Bull there. So I don't know. I think that he can still get the money and the publicity, but have Albon in the AlphaTauri.
Yeah, because to me, let's say if they don't and they stick with Alex Albon, which I do eventually think will happen, what happens if Albon has another similar year to this year and Red Bull are in a similar position where Albon's way down the field and Mercedes are running away with it again and Verstappen's just left alone to try and fight 2 cars? They're going to really regret not having Perez, especially if Perez is sitting at home or racing in another series. But I just think it's ridiculous for a guy like him to not have a seat. And I know that the whole conversation again circles back to the whole, Lance Stroll and all that stuff. But again, he's proven his worth in Formula One. You've talked about this a million times about having more teams, which would help with this solution and this problem. But it's going to be interesting to see what the decision is. But I really thought that the Turkish Grand Prix, like Red Bull's just kind of waiting for Albon to have that one good race that will justify the renewal of his contract. And I thought that this was going to be that race, especially if he was to win it. And again, he just kind of continued his sort of poor run of form. He was again way off in qualifying. I know, difficult conditions, but in the race too, just struggled as well. in the second half of the race. So let's see what happens. Let us know what you guys think. If Perez should be in that seat, or Albon, or Hulkenberg maybe. But I think that Perez is sort of the leading candidate right now, just with what he's shown us. So yeah, interesting times ahead, I think, for Red Bull.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a big decision for them to make, and it's really going to settle what the driver market is going to look like next year in F1, because really the only seats we're waiting on, obviously the Mercedes seat, but 99% that's going to Lewis, obviously. You have the Red Bull seat, and you have the 2 Haas seats, and I think that's it right now for seats. Lance Stroll's is not signed, I guess, for next year, but I think he's going to be signed for next year.
I think he'll be all right. Yeah. All right. Let's just a couple more things to wrap up. We kind of saved this one for last as it being the biggest story, although there was a lot of stories. I don't want to say this was kind of overshadowed, but just with so many things going on, was obviously Hamilton now officially clinches the 7th World Championship. We've been seeing it coming now for many, many races, pretty much since I would almost say the 3rd, 4th race of the season. But now it's officially done. It's in the history books. 7 World Championships, the same as Ferrari's Michael Schumacher. And I was just commenting that, when I was writing my article yesterday, that if there was a Lewis Hamilton win that maybe irritated me the most, it was certainly this one. And just from the standpoint of, it was like finally that race where the whole field was sort of equalized, and we might have seen another first-time winner, whether it was Stroll, Perez, or Albon. I was cheering for any one of them, obviously Stroll being the one I wanted the most, but I was like, yeah, we might get a first-time winner again. And Lewis Hamilton just came out of nowhere once again and crushed all that hope that I had for that race win. Did, I think, almost, I can't remember what it was, like 46 or 47 laps on the intermediate tire, basically turned it into a slick tire at the end of the race, and pretty much eventually just coasted home to win. I think he built up an almost 30-second lead near the end of the race. He vetoed the pit stop for the fresh intermediates, which, again, was the right move. And yeah, coasted home, another world championship in the pocket.
Yeah, no, it was a masterclass performance by Lewis. Once again, it seems like he just keeps doing it, keeps throwing amazing performances out there. So you could see how much Bottas was struggling, and the difference of the 2 drivers there. I mean, Bottas had maybe the worst weekend he's had in F1. Like, it's up there. It was really, really tough for him. Yeah. And I know he was very frustrated with himself. I think he spun 4 times or something like that. He looked like Vettel up there. But roles were reversed. Who would have thought? But no, absolutely masterclass from Lewis, and kind of showed why he's the best driver in the world now, and why he's up there for greatest of all time. 7th World Championship. It was kind of, it was interesting. I was watching it. I was thinking, with the last 2-3 matches, like, I'm watching history right here. Like, we're going to remember this race as the day that Lewis clinched his 7th record time World Championship. Taking all the emotions after, and I made sure to watch all the post-race stuff. I mean, it was really interesting to see how emotional Lewis was and how much it meant to him to tie Michael Schumacher's record. And in the end, it was a dominant performance by him, a champion. And it kind of gave me flashbacks to the 2007 title, the 2008 title, when he won in the rain in Brazil, with all the interesting things happening in that race. And it was a wet race here. There was no Glock moment, but it was kind of interesting to relate the two. The 7th in the rain and won the 1st in the rain.
Well, he also interestingly said that one of the reasons he didn't want to come in is because of the 2007 mistake that he made in China, when he got beached on the gravel there. So very interesting that was in the back of his mind at the end of the race too. But yeah, it was probably one of the very first times we'd ever seen like a real sort of genuine emotion from him, where he kind of broke down over team radio. It was really cool how they did the sort of the animation or the sort of projection onto his visor helmet. Very cool from F1. They've got a lot of those interesting innovations this year. Of course, it's easy when Hamilton's winning so much. They got time to create these things. So good for whoever came up with that idea. But yeah, one of the first times I kind of ever really remember him sort of being that emotional. But yeah, you're right. We were seeing a piece of history, and in such a crazy race too. And usually Hamilton doesn't necessarily clinch his world championships by winning the race, or even sometimes being on the podium. So for him, it was extra special to do it that way, continue his extension of the most wins in F1 as well, along with clinching the world championship as well too. So yeah, I can't really even think back to the day or the race that Michael clinched his 7th world title, but it was cool to witness this one as well. And like you said, we'll remember this one for sure. And again, like you said at the interview with Mark Webber, that he's going to be back next year for sure. I think it's just a matter of time that contract will be finalized, and then he's going to go for 8 in 2021.
Yeah, he's got a good chance at it too. Obviously in Mercedes, so we'll see. I mean, can Red Bull help make the title fight a little more interesting for this season? I know a lot of people were saying that sucks that he clinched this early because the last 3 races don't mean anything. Well, the last 7 races didn't mean anything. Lewis Hamilton was going to win the world championship. Like, we already knew what was going to happen this year. So the last 3 races will be nice too, just to enjoy the racing, hope for some surprises, and just take every race as its own championship almost. It'll be fun to watch the end of the season, and thank God we had a season this year.
Yeah, and it's like you said too. We've known it was coming for a while now. It's just, and regardless of even if somehow Valtteri was able to extend the championship onto Bahrain, it was still a massive long shot for him to even win the championship. So, and much like Hamilton's done his whole career, really didn't put a foot wrong in the race. I think again the one time he went wide on lap 1, and that was it. And the rest of the way, he was just able to keep the car on the right bits of the track, and unlike most of the other drivers, just didn't make any mistakes when it really mattered the most, and obviously made the right call on the strategy too. So yeah, I think there's still a lot to play for though in the last 3 races, like we mentioned with the midfield battle. I think that's where it's really going to come down to. Again, out front, it's kind of going to be most likely a procession at those tracks. I think, like you mentioned, the desert, we're not really going to get any crazy conditions unless we get some weird sandstorm. Yeah, exactly. Even then, it might work in Mercedes' favor. So championship is done now. It's official. We can kind of enjoy that and celebrate that. But yeah, now we just kind of look to the last 3 races of the season. And usually when the championship is clinched, everybody gets a little bit more relaxed. It's a little bit more fun in and around the paddock. So I think it's still going to be a decent end to the year. But regardless of that, I think that's pretty much covers the whole of the Turkish Grand Prix. Just before we wrap up, I wanted to quickly point out the crazy statistic that we didn't have one single safety car all day.
Yeah, everyone was very nice and clean, tidy out there, pretty much.
Yeah, even the likes of Latifi when he beached his car, and
I thought they might throw in for Giovinazzi, but they via safety car at that point because Stroll was in the lead.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so remarkable the fact that we didn't get one. Like I said, a couple VSCs, but that was it. So everybody was pretty well behaved, and was a very, very interesting race weekend for sure. I really enjoyed it though. Probably one of the best races this season, and we certainly had a lot to vote for when we get to the end of the year. But anything else that you wanted to bring up or add for this race that maybe I missed?
Yeah, one more thing. I just want to give another shout out to Sebastian Vettel. After the race, he was the first person to Lewis to congratulate him, and he was showing the emotion too with Lewis, saying you made history, congratulations and all that, and was right there. And it was really cool to see those two embrace each other. Obviously, Seb's had a tough year. He's been trying to chase Hamilton down for a few years now with Ferrari. Hamilton's got the better of him, and but still a 4-time champion and a 7-time champion now. Very cool to see those two embrace after the race, and you can see how emotional Hamilton was, how thankful he was that Sebastian did that, and how cool it was to see Sebastian. First thing he did, he saw Lewis kind of just emotional in the car, went over there to congratulate him, support him, and I believe they're good friends off the track. I could be wrong. But pretty special moment to see combined 11 world championships embracing like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Vettel's just a terrific sportsman, and great with that, as long as Hamilton as well. And their bromance is very interesting, considering we go back a couple of years and how intense it got for a short period of time. And it seemed like they were going to sort of be maybe like a Senna and Prost rivalry, and it never sort of happened that way. It's kind of become the sort of new Hakkinen and Schumacher, where there's a ton of mutual respect, but then even more so, there's also like a genuine friendship or an appreciation of each other. And maybe, I guess, just to wrap up the show, I don't know if you saw this, Tyler, but I thought that this was a really unique comment from Lewis Hamilton in the post-race press conference, when he was talking about Sebastian Vettel and while he was behind him. So let's just have a listen, because I thought that this was really cool.
I was behind Seb, and for a moment I was thinking I might get past him, and then me and him were having this battle, and it was so frustrating not to be able to get past him. But but also I was thinking, you know what? Seb has had the toughest year, I would say, probably, arguably, perhaps in his career, and I just thought that he was driving so well. So at the same time, I was like, he's doing so good, but damn it, he's in the way, and the guys up ahead are pulling away.
So it was almost, he's like, well, I needed to get by him, but I kind of felt bad for him, so I was just like, oh, okay, I'll kind of stick behind him. But anyways, I thought that was a very unique kind of comment, and their relationship is really cool. Like you said, 11 world championships between them, which is insane.
Yeah, no, very cool, and the mutual respect between those two is just amazing to see. So, I'm glad we're going to see them on the track together for a little bit longer, the next year or 2 years, who knows, to come.
Yeah, and who knows, we might get maybe just one more championship fight between them. You never know. It could be interesting couple of years ahead. So yeah. But a great weekend in Turkey. Thank you very much to the Turkish Grand Prix organizers and for them Istanbul Park hosting the circuit. That was the sort of final, I guess you'd call it new or / returning circuit this year on the 2020 calendar. So it's been a great season of seeing some of these old / new tracks back on the calendar. So we've really enjoyed the race, and we really enjoyed watching it and bringing this podcast to you. So that will do it for this episode number 97. We're approaching 100 episodes, actually, very close. I think we'll get that within the next couple of races time. So this is the final stretch, guys, in the season. We got the triple header coming up. Of course, we got the Bahrain and then the Bahrain Oval, finishing off with the finale in Abu Dhabi, as we usually do. And then that will do it for the 2020 season. So basically, until then, going to be a quiet week for us, as we'll take some time off here and bring you the preview again next week for Bahrain. But as usual, drop your comments down below of what you thought of this race, any of the other incidents involved as well, and just any general comments that you had on the Turkish Grand Prix and also going forward for the rest of the season. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. All the social links will be found in the video description below. Tyler, any final thoughts?
No, fantastic weekend, and can't wait for the Bahrain Oval in a few races time.
Me too. I think it should be very interesting. But until then, hope you guys have a great day and a great week ahead. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.